It's Jack, and this video is called Should You Be a Traditional Wife? Hey, I'm Jack. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, you haven't yet subscribed, I'd love for you to be with us. I release videos on dating, authenticity, self-improvement, and how we can improve our society. And I would love to have you with us. It's a great community to be part of. So let's get into this. I'm going to give you a bit of a caveat, a bit of context, and then we're going to go right into the topic. So caveat is, I'm a guy sharing some experiences from my life that may be useful to you, the places that I've struggled. I try to create less struggle for other people. I'm not saying what I'm about to say is true. It's a perspective. My intention with the perspective is to help you find more truth, ease, and authenticity in your own life. So if it's not happening, that listening to me is providing that, feel free to click off. And then the context I want to talk about is we're in some culture wars right now. One way of thinking about the culture wars is that people with more traditional values and people with more postmodern values are kind of duking it out. And mostly they don't get each other and they can't really find common ground. I'm an integralist. The integral claim is that to find common ground between traditional values and postmodern values, you have to see that they are different and valid value systems and learn how to be more conversant and fluid to move between them and get what is valuable about each of them. So that may or may not make sense to you, but let's get into the topic. There is a whole set of videos being produced on TikTok and YouTube and elsewhere that are being produced by traditional wives, trad wives, people who are saying, actually, what I most want is to be a homemaker, a mother, a wife, and that is actually where I feel I'm most happy. And they tend to get into conflict with people who have a more postmodern or feminist perspective, which says, hey, actually, no, a woman's place isn't just in the home. A woman's place is in society. A woman's place is following her dreams and ambitions. A woman's place is in the workplace. A woman's place is having a fulfilling career. A woman's place is not to be restricted by a more traditional or, in their view, patriarchal structure that kind of dictates and limits women's wants and desires. Actually, we need to break out of that, and that's what we've been doing for the last many decades, and that we've still got ways to go. So it's hard for these people to find any common ground. Now, one of the things, and this, I'm not any kind of expert on this, I just have come across a little bit of data that surprisingly and in some ways unacceptably to people who are on the more postmodern feminist side, that some of the happiest self-reported happiness people seem to be people who are in this more traditional orientation, in these traditional roles, and are in a sort of traditional community. I came up many years ago, I had to do a talk in Vegas as part of like an entrepreneurship summit. And I came up with this idea that happiness, like self-reported happiness, is proportional to the harmonization between your values and the values of the people that you mostly interact with. So from that perspective, if you are someone that has traditional values and you're in a mostly traditional community, you are probably going to be quite happy. If you're someone that has these postmodern values and you are mostly moving in a world of postmodern values, you're kind of likely to be happy. Now, I'm not making one better or worse, right? We don't look at it in that way. What we say is there does seem to be a direction in how individuals and cultures develop through time. And it seems that societies, as they, at least in the West, as they democratize, industrialize, as women work more and have more parity in the workplace, still some ways to go, but there are also some really positive outcomes. Currently, there are more women, for instance, graduating medical school. More women are getting master's degrees. As these things happen, there tends to be a somewhat predictable trajectory to a society, right? That the more a society gives freedom and education to women, the more society moves into more modern and postmodern sensibility. So there's a direction to that. It's not so common that it goes the other direction, right? It's not so common that postmodern societies or societies that have an increasing center of cultural gravity in this kind of postmodern worldview tend to come into a more traditional worldview. So this is not better or worse. It's just saying that, and this is not Jack talking, this is like developmental psych. This is integral theory. This is the direction through time that individuals and cultures seem to take. So what's the bottom line of this? It's, at least in my estimation, people tend to be happier when their social surround matches their values, right? So if you're, let's say you're deeply religious and you spend a lot of time in your church community, and what you get reflected back to you is you are super valuable, super loved, because there's a set of ideals within this religious community, and you're living them, and you're actually doing great, and you're kind of being held up as as a role model. You're doing exactly what people expected of you, and you're doing it well. You're probably going to be quite happy with that. Where this might start to break down is, let's say you start to, at some point, maybe you start to want some of the sort of freedoms of expression and self-expression that you see that other women have, that in this more traditional orientation community, that's not what's being valued. What's being valued is that you're following the societal script, text script, right? Whether that's a Bible or some other religious text that this community has. Some of the least happy people can be those who are exiting a kind of worldview or stage in their values development. Right? So let's imagine, I've known people like this. Let's imagine you grew up in the Mormon church, and at some point you are getting curious if this is the way to be in the world. You're getting curious of some of the claims. Maybe you're looking at this, the way of being, and perhaps it seems patriarchal to you, and you're starting to push out against that. That can be an uncomfortable place, because now you're kind of at odds with the center of gravity of the culture and value system that you're in. You might feel isolated with that. You might feel lost. There might be a breakdown of your worldview, literally, right? So you don't really know what to orient to. You're kind of asking questions. You're getting new insights and ideas, but you also have had perhaps this sense of belonging, and that's at risk. And that sense of belonging, you don't have to be Maslow in the hierarchy of needs to realize, we all have a strong sense of that. It can be hard to want to give that up. And then maybe you start to find, let's say you're on TikTok and you're finding videos of all these people who have successfully left the Mormon church, and they actually feel that they're happier now than they were when they were in the church, right? Again, I'm not saying that's everyone's experience. That is a set of experiences. And perhaps you start to get some new community who have this different center of values system, and they're saying, actually, you start thinking for yourself, start questioning stuff that's been told to you. Stop obeying authority structures that maybe don't have your highest interest in mind. Stop being submissive when maybe it doesn't serve you. But that period of transition, right? And it may not fully resolve in someone's lifetime, but that period of transition can be years. Typically, it's many years. And typically, that is a time of dislocation. It can sometimes also be a time of excitement, because people are discovering new things. They're kind of like breaking out of the mold, maybe. And again, I'm talking in gross oriented generalizations. There's all sorts of things that can happen in people's journeys and trajectories. But maybe you get a flavor of that. But that person who's in the dislocation may be starting to get connected to different types of truth, more maybe modernist truths, more of an idea of equality between the sexes, more of an idea of their own agency and empowerment, more that their individual freedoms and rights are important and they're not going to subsume them to the group. But they might not be as happy when all that's going on as the person who is in that church, who is sort of living the center of ideals of that community. And or they might not be as happy as, let's say you're a burner and you go to Burning Man and you are super in the Burning Man world and community and worldview, and your year's about Burning Man, and you create the art and you run the art installations, and everyone in your community loves your art. They love how expressive you are. They love how much a part of that community you are. The person who's in this dislocation I'm talking about, leaving a church, is probably not going to be as happy as that person, because their social surround is matching their values of what they sense a good life is. Right? Do you kind of get what I'm pointing to? And I'm not saying which one is better or not. I'm just saying anyone who's in a sort of stabilized worldview and is living the values of the people around them is probably going to self-report as happier as someone who's in a period of dislocation, dismantling a worldview, maybe coming into a new worldview, probably feeling lost, probably feeling rejected, probably having difficult conversations, probably having other people say that they feel betrayed, probably getting shunned and rejected. That's a little harder path. Now, it might take them to somewhere that is better for them. And by the way, I don't think we even choose our own development, right? Meaning there are bigger forces at play, that when someone is ready to leave a worldview and take on a new worldview, I don't think that they sort of say, 2025 would be a great year to have a complete breakdown of my worldview. No, I think it's development, right? Just in the same way that you get growing pains. You don't choose that. It's kind of happening, right? And I don't mean to say that you're completely passive in the process. Just, stuff is moving through you. Life is happening, and your development is unfolding, and you are responding as much as generating that, in my view. So why am I telling you all this, right? The point of this video is to encourage you to get curious about your worldview, get curious about whether you can start to understand someone else's worldview, get curious about whether your worldview is kind of stable or whether it might be in the time of, we come called as exiting. You might be exiting a worldview or exiting a value system or starting that process and realizing that may be uncomfortable, but it may be for your future benefit. But in the meantime, your happiness may go down. If you are someone who's more postmodernist and feminist, maybe it's okay for you in this way of looking at things to notice, maybe someone who is a trad wife and is kind of selling that lifestyle to people, maybe they're being genuine. Maybe actually it is true in their path that this is an authentic way of being for them. Or maybe it's even a way of being where authenticity isn't really the value that's being valued. Maybe the values of respect and decency and honesty and tradition and religion, family, faith, that these are the things that are mostly being valued, and that if someone is really valuing them, this is a great fit for them, and we don't have to be in judgment of that. It's not like we have to decide that what's right for me is what's right for you, right? We sometimes say this is the difference between judgment and discernment. Discernment is what's right for me doesn't need to be right for you, but I don't have to be in judgment that you're doing something different. I think this is part of the way out of this culture war, and also just not imagining from your own sensibility that, wow, if someone is accepting this way of life, right, this would be the critique of trad wives, that they must be brainwashed, or they must be kind of misaligned in their values, right? They might be in a way of being that is exactly the way of being that is right for them, and that can be really hard to a feminist perspective. But maybe we need to create a little bit more space around a sort of plurality, not just of diversity in the way that we often think about it, but actual diversity of worldviews. That's almost like the real diversity in certain ways, or it's a deeper type of diversity that's perhaps harder for people to notice, but it has real value if you can get into it. So I don't want to make this too abstract, right? What I'm saying is people might be entitled to the way that they want to live, and the more we can say you do you and I'll do me, and maybe we can get curious about, well, what do you have that might be of value to me, and vice versa, right? So it might be that the postmodernists can look at the trad wives and say, oh, actually, well, you seem to have a lot of family support, and you seem to be clear what your role is, and you get a lot of purpose from that role, and you're in a tight-knit community. And I can get why those things are all valuable. And maybe in my own life, I miss a little bit of having that tight-knit community, of having that shared group of shared sort of sense of values of there's a thing that we do and we come together and we pray about it and we commune about it. It might not be right for me to do that, because actually I want all the sort of hard fought gains of a postmodern existence, right? I'm not going to be giving up my autonomy and authenticity, and I don't want to be in this patriarchal structure, and I've been working my life to dismantle these things. But some kind of mutual respect may give you a way of being in the world that you actually prefer, and there may be ways that we can still learn from each other, and it might just be we need to be true to the data, and the data suggests that people who are living values that are similar to the people around them are often some of the happiest people, at least in the self-reported study. So I have no idea how this is going to land. If you would leave a comment, I'd love to hear from you. What's your experience? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Feel free to push back. Keep it constructive. That's my only request. No one has to agree with me. I can be 100% wrong in your view, but push back respectfully, and let's see if between us we can generate a better conversation. My aim in this is to help you understand your own path, is to help you get curious about what the data is, and is also to help relax this duking off of the culture wars by offering some of the ways out. So I hope my intention has been met. I'm Jack. Please subscribe, and as always, thanks for being here.